The rise of Pixar, how a studio rejected by the industry changed the face of global animation. Part 1, The Birth of a Technology, 1970 to 1986. The story of Pixar did not begin in a studio filled with artists, but within the strict confines of computer laboratories. Its roots trace back to the 1970s, at the University of Utah, where a graduate student named Ed Catmull began working on his dream, creating feature-length animated films using computers. At the time, this was a purely academic pursuit. Computer graphics were in their infancy, and even the simplest three-dimensional models demanded enormous computational power and were far from realistic. Catmull received his PhD in 1974, and his talent was soon recognized by George Lucas, who was ascending after the success of Star Wars. In 1979, Lucas hired Catmull to establish the computer graphics division within Lucasfilm. This department's mission was twofold: to develop advanced digital equipment for film post-production and to create a system for digital animation. A key employee in this division was Alvy Ray Smith, a scientist with both a technical and artistic vision. Together, they developed revolutionary technology, including the groundbreaking RenderMan algorithm, which allowed computer models to be rendered with realistic texture and lighting. In 1982, their small team created a pivotal short film, The Adventures of Andre and Wally B. This film, while technically primitive by today's standards, was the first to demonstrate character animation created entirely on a computer. By the mid-1980s, however, the division remained unprofitable. It was more a research lab than a commercial venture. Following his divorce in 1984, Lucas needed funds, and the computer graphics division became a burdensome asset he decided to sell. It seemed the dream of computer animation would die almost as soon as it was born. Part 2, The Steve Jobs Era and the Search for Identity, 1986 to 1995. Salvation came in 1986 in the form of Steve Jobs, who had recently been forced out of Apple. Jobs, looking for a new project, saw immense, though vague, potential in Catmull and Smith's technology. He purchased the Lucas division for $5 million and invested another $5 million in working capital, founding the independent company Pixar. The name Pixar was conceived as a combination of pixel and a verb similar to the Spanish, to make or hacer. However, Pixar's early years were extremely difficult. Jobs believed the company's future lay in selling specialized hardware, the Pixar Image Computer, intended for high-end visualization in medicine and science. This business proved to be a failure. The machine was too expensive for the mass market, and the company continued to lose millions of dollars, funded solely by Jobs' personal wealth. Between 1986 and 1990, Jobs invested about $50 million in Pixar, constantly pushing it to the brink of collapse. During this critical time, John Lasseter became the key figure. He was an animator who had been fired from Disney for believing too strongly in the potential of computer animation. Lasseter convinced Catmull and Smith that Pixar's true value was not in the hardware but in the content. While the company struggled with computer sales, Lasseter focused on creating short films that would serve not only as a showcase for RenderMan but also as proof of the artistic viability of computer animation. Shorts such as Tin Toy, 1988, which won an Academy Award for Best Animated Short Film, and Knick Knack, 1989, emerged. These shorts proved two things: first, computer animation could convey emotion and humor, and second, Pixar possessed unique creative talent. It was these shorts that convinced the film industry that Pixar was more than just a technology company. Part 3, The Partnership with Disney and the Revolution, 1991 to 2000. In 1991, recognizing Pixar's growing potential, Disney signed a contract with them to produce 3 feature-length animated films. It was a highly unfavorable deal for Pixar. Disney fully financed the films, but owned them, took almost all the profit, and had full creative control over the character rights. However, for Pixar, it was the only way to survive. The result of this partnership was Toy Story, released in 1995. It was not just a success, it was a cultural, technical, and financial revolution. Key success factors of Toy Story. Technical breakthrough. The film was the first feature-length film in history created entirely using computer-generated imagery, CGI. It achieved unprecedented levels of detail, particularly in lighting and textures, though animators were intentionally instructed to choose characters made of plastic and wood to avoid the complex animation of human skin and hair. The storytelling. John Lasseter and his team, including Andrew Stanton, insisted that the film must possess emotional depth. The core theme, the toy's fear of being replaced and the friendship story between the cowboy Woody and the space ranger Buzz Lightyear, proved universal and moving. The script underwent numerous revisions, including the infamous Black Friday, when the first draft was rejected by Disney for being too dark and cynical. The team returned to work, focusing on themes of heart and friendship. Business impact. The film grossed over $361 million worldwide, making it the highest-grossing film of 1995. Its success allowed Pixar to hold an initial public offering, IPO, just 1 week after the premiere. The IPO raised $140 million for the company, making Steve Jobs a billionaire. Subsequent films, A Bug's Life, 1998, and Toy Story 2, 1999, proved the success was not a fluke. Toy Story 2, initially planned as a direct-to-video sequel, was rescued by John Lasseter and his team and reworked into a full-fledged, technically superb feature film. It became the first sequel to gross more than the original, and it was nominated for a Golden Globe. Part 4. The Gold Standard of Quality and the Brain Trust Formula, 2000 to 2006. The early 2000s marked the era when Pixar transformed into Hollywood's gold standard. The studio released hit after hit, demonstrating that creativity and commercial success could go hand in hand. Key films of the decade, such as Monsters Incorporated, 2001, and Finding Nemo, 2003, not only pushed technical boundaries, animating fur, water, and hair, but also deepened the storytelling, addressing themes of fear, parental love, and loss. Finding Nemo became a true phenomenon, grossing over $940 million worldwide. Pixar's central secret to success, the creative culture. The heart of Pixar's creative process was the Brain Trust. This was an informal committee composed of the studio's key directors and writers, Lasseter, Catmull, Stanton, Pete Docter, and others. The principles of the Brain Trust were radical for Hollywood. Honest and relentless criticism. Trust members were obligated to give the most honest criticism possible, regardless of how far along the project was. Criticism always focused on the story, never on the director's personality. Lack of authority. The Brain Trust did not have the authority to mandate changes. The director always retained full control over the film and could choose to ignore the advice, though this was rare. The goal of the Brain Trust was to help, not to command. Constant rewriting. Pixar films could be rewritten and completely overhauled up to 7 times. Andrew Stanton once famously said, "We don't finish our films, we just release them." This culture allowed the studio not to fear failure and ensured the release of a product that was refined to perfection. As a result, Pixar films regularly won Academy Awards for Best Animated Feature, proving that the studio had become the leading force in the industry. Part 5. The Merger with Disney and the Legacy, 2006-present. By 2004, the relationship between Pixar and Disney had reached a critical point. Steve Jobs, realizing how valuable his studio was, refused to renew the unprofitable contract. Disney, facing a crisis in its own animation division, their recent films were underperforming, found itself in a desperate position. In 2006, Disney acknowledged its defeat and made a purchase that many considered unthinkable. It acquired Pixar for $7.4 billion. This deal was not just a financial transaction. It was a transfer of culture. Under the terms of the deal, Ed Catmull became president of both Pixar and Walt Disney Animation Studios. John Lasseter became the chief creative officer of both studios. The new leadership brought the principles of the Brain Trust and Story is King to Disney Animation. Under their direction, Disney underwent its own creative renaissance, releasing hits like Tangled, Frozen, and Zootopia. Pixar itself continued to dominate the industry with iconic films like WALL-E, 2008, Up, 2009, and Toy Story 3, 2010. These films showed that the studio was capable of creating not only engaging but also deeply philosophical and emotionally complex works. Up became only the second animated film in history to be nominated for the Academy Award for Best Picture. Pixar proved that computer animation is not a genre but a medium for storytelling. The studio that was once rejected for being too technology-focused ultimately used that very technology to make Hollywood more human and more focused on narrative. Pixar's legacy is not just billions of dollars in box office revenue, but a change in the approach to creativity, where scientific genius and artistic talent work hand in hand, and where the sole objective is to tell a great story.